The final part of this lesson is talking about equivalent ratios. Now remember, you can write a ratio as a fraction, so this is basically another way of saying equivalent fractions. So if you've worked with equivalent fractions before, yay, it's nothing new. If you haven't worked with equivalent fractions before, I recommend that you watch the video on equivalent fractions where it spends quite a bit of time talking about equivalent fractions. I'll do a brief summary here. If I had the fraction of 7 over 4, or in other words, the ratio of 7 to 14, 7 over 14. Apologize, I said 7 over 4. I would need to reduce this fraction into an equivalent form. To do that, I would divide both the top and bottom of the fraction by the same number. Now, why did I pick the number 7? 7 is the greatest common factor of both 7 and 14. So again, if this is a review for you, you can kind of skip through this section. But to find the greatest common factor, what you do is list all of the factors of the numerator. So the factors of 7 are 1 times 7. And the factors of 14 are 1, 2, 7, and 14. Those are the numbers that multiply together to give you 14. 1 times 14, 2 times 7. The largest number that is in both of those lists is 7. That means that 7 is our greatest common factor. So you divide the top divided by 7, and the bottom divided by 7, and you get your equivalent ratio, or your equivalent fraction. So 7 over 14 is equal to 1/2. In other words, if you have a ratio of 7 to 14, it's the same as having a ratio of 1 to 2. All right. Another way that you can make equivalent ratios is actually when you multiply. You can multiply the top and bottom of a fraction times any number as long as it's the same number on the top and bottom, and you'll get an equivalent ratio. So 2 to 3 is equivalent to 6 to 9. Again, the number 3 doesn't matter. You can multiply it times any number as long as it's the same on the top and bottom, and it will be an equivalent ratio, or in other words, equivalent fraction. One special type of equivalent ratio is called a unit rate. A unit rate is a ratio that has the denominator of 1. That's it. So here's an example, here's an example, and here's an example. 5 over 1, 9 over 1, 13 over 1. All of them have a denominator of 1. That's what makes it a unit rate. When we read it, we would say something per something. For example, miles per hour. So you can see these three ratios would be read as 5 miles per hour, 9 miles per hour, 13 miles per hour. And what it's saying is it's 13 miles per 1 hour, or 9 miles per 1 hour. We can use other words other than miles per hour. It could be rotations per minute. We often use this to make comparisons. So it's your amount, your original amount, per 1 unit. That's why it's called the unit rate, so per 1 mile. Although we don't say it's 25 miles per 1 hour, that's why we just say per hour. And that's just an example. So if you're ever asked to make a unit rate, all it's asking you to do is make the denominator have 1. Here's an example of a question, just showing you how to do that. Write this ratio as a unit rate. So 15 to 3 as a unit rate. I would start out by writing it as a fraction, and then converting it into having a denominator of 1. The way you make the denominator 1 is you take the denominator divided by the denominator. So whatever the denominator is, you're going to divide by that. And that's going to make your denominator equal to 1. To keep it an equivalent ratio, you have to do the top divided by that same number. In this case, 15 divided by 3 is 5. So our new unit rate is 5 over 1. So if you add 15 to 3, it's equivalent to 5 to 1, or 5 per